Bro, so last night, very tragic. A friend from my childhood supposedly died. Someone told me this, and it was traumatic. I haven't talked to that guy in 5 years. I don't know if traumatic's the right word, but it was hard. I'm still not confirmed that it happened, but all I could think about last night was that kid's life. I don't know what's happened to him because I haven't talked to him in 5 years, and I hope, but all I could just think about was, dude, if I could say anything to him, the only thing I care about telling him is about Jesus.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's just the urgency of humans think that we have some obligation of time, that all 24 hours in a day are ours, and that we're owed at least 80 years on the planet, and that if you die before 80 years, that's like a horrible, terrific stealing of your time. We think of time as ours, but it's not.
Oh, no. That's the thing, dude, is that's the thing that the Lord's made me so conscious of, and he's just revealed to me so much, is as humans, we tend to take advantage of tomorrow so much. We're like, dude, tomorrow's going to be so lit. Next week is going to be so sick. I'm going to Disneyland. I'm going skydiving. I'm going on this trip. But as soon as we're in the moment, we don't think anything of it.
Yeah.
We're there, and we're instantly looking forward to the next moment. And I feel like the Lord's revealed this to me in I've gotten in a lot of injuries and just a lot of...
You should elaborate.
I've gotten in a lot of close death experiences. I've had a lot of friends. I've had 6 friends pass away, 7 friends pass away in the last 7 years, and just from a ton of different things. And I felt like the Lord was just saying to me, dude, tomorrow isn't promised. The only tomorrow that is promised is that new life in heaven with Him. The only thing that is promised, it says in Proverbs 27:1, do not boast for tomorrow, for you do not know what a day holds within it. And it's just if you think about that, it's just why would I go off bragging about tomorrow if I don't know if I'm gonna go break my ankle tomorrow. Yeah. I have something just super good to look forward to, but why would I go brag about that when I'm living in the moment now with God? The only tomorrow that is truly promised as a Christian is tomorrow in heaven with Jesus. Tomorrow in heaven in the throne room with God, sitting at the right hand of the throne with the Father. And it's when you're sitting, if you come to that perspective, it just makes you so thankful for the breath in your lungs. A year ago, I got into a really, really bad accident on an electric skateboard, and I was just I just woke up in a hospital bed, basically. Started falling back, woke up in a hospital bed, and just what just happened? And it was gnarly. And then it just made me realize, dude, if I had died just now, if I had died just in that moment, and I was sitting at the feet of Jesus, would I be the type of person to be Lord, I did this. Lord, I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I was about to go do this? Or would I be the person to sit there and just be holy, holy, holy? Because one of them is me thinking that I made it in through my works, and one of them is Him just saying, good job, good and faithful servant.
Wow.
And it's it's the same thing with end times, for example. Think about that, where it's Jesus is going to come back sooner than later. It could be this exact second, or it could be whatever, way in the future. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to get into the whole theological talk of end times, but but I was listening to a podcast literally yesterday, and the guy was like, so what do you think we should be doing? What the question is, what would you do different if tomorrow Jesus were to come back? And the correct answer is, you should not be thinking of doing anything different. Yeah. Because if you think that you're doing something, that you should do something different, then you're not living your life in the right way. Yeah. You're living your life as the way of the world. Yeah. So then if you're thinking that, and say you're watching a movie, for example, and it's not it's say it's Deadpool. Yeah. Just really explicit, really just not a great movie. And you're sitting there and you were if Jesus were to come back right now and walk into the room, what would I do? Yeah. It's there's so many thoughts of tomorrow is the only tomorrow that's promised is tomorrow in heaven with God. So why are we taking advantage of every single moment of every day?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's hard when I hear something said like that, because it almost feels like, all right, so should I never watch a movie again? Because if I felt that Jesus was coming back tomorrow, I think for the most part, I wouldn't live any differently. I mean, certainly filming this podcast with you talking about Jesus feels like a good use of time. But it's all right, when I go home and I'm going to spend 10 minutes on YouTube watching a YouTube video, it's I don't know if I would do that if I
that's the thing is, our job as Christians, Chris was talking about this on Sunday. Yeah. Our job as Christians is to glorify God. Yeah. That's our entire purpose on this earth, is to glorify God, right? So if our job is to glorify God,
Yeah.
then I'm not saying like, oh, like watching a movie's bad. Like, not at all. No. But like, if I'm watching Deadpool, is that glorifying God at all? No.
No.
And it's like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think that we're still okay. I still watch YouTube. I still watch movies. I still watch Netflix. I still watch TV shows, all this stuff. But it's like, the thing I'm more thinking of is like, say that Jesus is coming back in 10 minutes and I was at the Chipotle and the girl who was taking our order didn't know Jesus. If I knew consciously that Jesus was coming back tomorrow, I would have walked up to every single person in that Chipotle and preached the gospel.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's like thinking of that, where it's like I would just be so much more bold in my faith, and I would be. And it's like I don't want to have to change anything, so I'm like I try my best, but it's just super hard because I get caught in the world.
Well, and I think that's like what you just said puts it perfectly, is that you're never gonna live up to it.
Yeah.
Because in reality, like you said, if Jesus was coming back in 10 minutes, we would end this podcast because I wouldn't be able to upload this in 10 minutes, and we'd run to every version in this park and we'd try to tell them about Jesus. And it's not that this podcast is a bad use of time, because maybe this podcast is going to reach even more people than are in this park. But it's like always having that perspective. Again, like we will always fall short. That's the whole point. That's why you need Jesus. If you were perfect, then you wouldn't need him, but we're not. So it's like, I think like what you said, it's the perspective of always living and thinking about that to the best of your ability.
Yeah. And the way that I started changing my life in the way of like being a quote good Christian or whatever you want to call it, in getting consistent and reading my Bible and praying and spending time with God and getting stoked to go to events and stuff like that, is it all just comes from the secret place and just spending time reading your Bible and praying, one-on-one with God. And for me, there's this book called Atomic Habits, a fantastic book. And there's this analogy there's a story of a girl in it, and she loses 100 pounds in a year, just changing her mindset, not from, I'm going to go from fat to fit. I'm not going to get a six pack. She didn't say any of that. She just said every single day, in every single moment, what would someone who is healthy do in this situation? Would they eat the carrot or would they eat the cookie? Would they take the stairs or would they take the elevator? Would they take the taxi or would they walk? And every single time, she just chose the healthy person thing. And so I started just thinking, what would someone just so on fire for the Lord do right now? Would they pray or would they go watch a movie? Would they read their Bible or would they go do all this stuff? And it's like it started changing. And of course, sometimes I'll spend, as long as I spend time with the Lord every single day, I won't feel as guilty to go watch TV and stuff. Of course, there's always stuff you can do better with your time and stuff like that. But sometimes it is so nice to just sit back, chill, watch a TV show, watch a movie. Like I'm not saying it's bad at all. It's great.
Yeah, because not that I like necessarily care what they think, but I'm just trying to give them a perspective where they're like,
absolutely.
But this is the stuff you need to hear, and it's so funny because I know hopefully there's people listening to this podcast who know me and know my content in the future, and it's like, why I want people to listen to this podcast and be like, not why did Ozzy become a Christian and post Bible verses on his story sometimes. I want them to be like, why is he sitting here telling me that every single moment of my life should be dedicated to the Lord? And there's a reason. It's not because I think that I'm going to be received as cool.
Yeah.
It's really not. It's because literally what I said, if Jesus was coming back right now, if you were my friend that I supposedly died last night, that this is the only thing I care that you care. And again, I'm going to film podcasts that I'm not going to talk about Jesus in.
Like, this is the only true thing that matters in life.
Chris put it so beautifully.
I knew you were going to say this.
He put it so beautifully. He said, when you play Monopoly, there's the money, there's the pink $500 bills and the white $20 bills and the green bills and the blue bills. And he says, you're in the game and you're like, I need to get all the money. I need to make everyone bankrupt. And let's say you lose the game, Asher wins, and he goes, hey, I won the game, but you can have all this money. And he gives me all the money. And I'm like, I don't want this money. This money's trash now. Why is the money trash? Because the game is over. That's like everything in life. If I get 10 million subscribers on this podcast, there is a period of time on earth where it will matter. There's a period of time where my 10 million subscribers on this podcast will get me into exclusive events, will help me to meet people I look up to, where it will matter. But when the game of life is over, it will not mean anything if it didn't turn people toward the Lord. And and the way he says it is that unlike the game of Monopoly, unlike the Monopoly money, we do have a chance to make it worth something, that we can exchange Monopoly money for kingdom currency. In Luke 16:9, it says, here's a lesson. Use your earthly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then, when your worldly possessions are gone, they will welcome you to an eternal home. What he's saying is that if you make friends in Christ and benefit others and bring them to Christ, that they will be with you eternally, forever in heaven. So it says, this podcast is Monopoly money. But if it brings someone to Christ, then that will be kingdom currency. That will be someone I can spend eternity with. And that's why I will do episodes with Asher and talk for an hour and a half about Jesus, because I don't want to make Monopoly money out of this podcast.
Yeah.
But I am very strategical in the sense that I'm not going to title this anything related to God or Christ, or I'm not going to title it anything related to Christianity or Christ, because I want someone to accidentally click on this and be like, why am I listening to a sermon? I film podcasts with people that I know I'm not going to talk about God with, and maybe that's a flaw, maybe I should. But the point is that, and I think maybe I've mentioned this to you, why I won't advertise myself as a Christian content creator. One, because I don't think I'm well known enough to speak on Christ publicly like that yet. And I really care about how I represent Christ. I'm not just going to go start making content about him if it will never be perfect. But say more time. But two, and the way bigger reason, is that the algorithms are so accurate that I was a Christian 2 years ago. I was a lukewarm Christian. I got recommended Christian content to me 0 times, except for Christmas and Easter. Not one time. And I was a Christian. And not one time did I get Christian content recommended to me. So if the algorithms are only getting better and you make Christian content, well then who is your Christian content getting served to? Christians. That's great. We need a lot. We need a lot of people. We need those waterers, those people. But there's so many ways to increase your faith. I can read my Bible. I can pray. I can go to church. Beyond those things, social media, I can watch sermons online, apologetics on TikTok. I can follow Christian influencers. But what content? And I hope this podcast lives in that section where it's like, what content is going to tell someone about Christ who's not a Christian? What content is going to land in front of a frat? I was in a frat. Why? Well, I hope this podcast lands in a frat kid's hands. I hope this podcast lands in a random college kid's hands. I hope that by making podcasts with random creators, that this podcast will land with random creators, because that's like where I see myself as like a planter. But it is so, I have to check my pride so much, because I'm like, I have to constantly ask myself, is that really my motive? Or do I just want an excuse to be more worldly? And that's like something I'm constantly asking myself, and I'm not perfect. There's times where sometimes it's for me, and there's sometimes it's for Christ, and I'm trying to get so that more and more that choice is always for Christ. Sorry, that was a rant, but
it's all good. I feel like a lot of also one question that I got asked a lot when I would like speak at a youth group or something like that is like prayer. People like, I'll say like, oh, just pray and God will answer your prayer. And people are like, but I don't know how to pray, or I won't pray good enough, or like, guys, the prayer is the most simple thing in the world. Like one of my friends, the way that she prays, it's so awesome. It's so funny, but it's like the way that she connects with God. In the Bible, it says in Matthew 18, it says the disciples are asking Jesus, who is the greatest in the kingdom? And he says, like, be like this child. The greatest in the kingdom is those who are like a child. And it's like, we're supposed to have childlike faith.
Yeah.
And the way that my friend will literally pray is she'll start her prayer like, what's going on, God? Back at it again with another prayer. Hope your day's going good. Here's what's going on in mine. It's so awesome. Thanks for life. Blah, blah, blah. She'll go on like whatever, however long her prayer is. But like, guys, just don't overthink it. Like, God already knows everything that you're thinking about. Everything, all the anger, all the questions, all of the thankfulness, all of these things. So if you want to sit there and pray and be like, God, why did this happen? God, what's this? God, and just ask him questions. Let him know your heart, like where you are. Open yourself up to him. Like you're not hiding anything from him. And so it's just like, if you really are able to just sit there and be like, God, why did my parents get divorced? Like I'm so frustrated at you. Like, what's going, like, you're just talk to him. And that's the thing, is also some of prayer is sometimes just sitting in the quiet and listening. And sometimes, like, you won't think you're hearing anything because you're not hearing any voices, but things will pop into your head and you'll be like, no, that's my own thoughts. But what if they aren't? Like, yes, they could be. Absolutely, they could be. But what if they aren't? And that's where the muscle of, like, growing up, like, hearing God's voice comes from.
I mean, I'm so glad you said that, because there were so many times in my journey, and I'd be lying if I didn't say that I still have occasional moments like this where it's like you go to pray to God and you're like, okay, I want to ask him why this bad thing happened to me, but I don't want to. If you're like, I can't treat God that way. Mm-hmm. It's like, dude, the second you have that thought, he already knows. Yeah. So it's like in the same way that if you go to a good counselor, they're going to tell you, and you have a problem with your parents, they're going to make you sit down and talk about it. They're going to tell you, if you have an issue with your friend, talk it through. The worst thing you can do is not talk about it. Mm-hmm. It's like, with God, it's like God wants to have the most intimate, deep, loving relationship with you that he possibly can. So nothing is off limits. And if you think you did something horrible,
you probably did.
You probably did. And God still loves you.
Yeah, absolutely.
He still loves you.
Absolutely.
And he's not, he would rather talk to you about it than just pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And that's, that's good.